Welcome to episode 4 of Parlour Pours, recorded live in Peggy's Whiskey Parlour here in Mother Mac's Public House in Limerick City. In this episode we are joined by Master Distiller of the Year Paul Corbett, and we discussed working in a black site experimental vineyard, the 2008 recession, moving to Edinburgh to study in the Harriet Watt, his time in Teeling and Clonakilty whisky, and in the Powerscourt turnkey foresight plant, the cask collection and innovation in Powerscourt Distillery.
Where the stories flow, whiskey warms as the embers glow. From cask to glass, from past to now, we sip, we laugh, we raise a vow. Parlour Pours.
Okay, welcome to Peggy's Whiskey Parlour, and tonight we are joined by Paul Corbett, head distiller for Cullen Powerscourt Distillery. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
He's looking quite nervous right now at the moment. There was supposed to be another man here, but he got sent in. But that's okay. We promised to be quite nice.
Be gentle.
Yeah,
I will be gentle. Small, but anyway. First couple of questions.
And he's sitting in between myself and James, and I kind of jokingly said we'll thump him if he doesn't give the right answer. So, I think we made him a little bit more nervous. So, I suppose, why not open up by telling us just a little bit about yourself, a little about your journey into whiskey, and I suppose how you ended up in Powerscourt.
Yeah, so, like you said, my name's Paul Corbett. I'm the head distiller, master blender for Powerscourt Distillery. My journey into whiskey started, in university. I did a degree in microbiology. And then my plan after I graduated was to go to Edinburgh to do the master brewer course at Harriet Watt. But kind of straight out of college, I got a job in pharmaceuticals in Cork. It's just so much down there, and kind of got sucked in by the money. And then I was offered to go to I got a job in Japan. So I was look, I was only 22, 23.
You have to take that.
So you couldn't turn down. Went there for a few months, and then, like so many other Irish young people at the time, got the opportunity to go to Australia. Spent a year, actually working in a vineyard in Australia. So I was still in the alcohol business.
In a vineyard?
Yeah.
Which vineyard? Give it a shout out.
It didn't actually have a name. It was an experimental vineyard. So it was the first time they were trying to grow grapes that far north. So it didn't actually make any wine out of it.
It sounds like a bit of a black site or something. It didn't have a name and it was experimental.
I actually don't know what ended up happening with it. It was full of snakes and emus.
Oh, lovely.
They try and kick you in the morning, so glad didn't have to stay there too long.
There was a friend of ours actually like that. He went to actually, it was in New Zealand, Australia. I think it was Australia more than that. And like that, he used to work on the vineyards and like between, I suppose, like every young Irish person, he kind of picking fruit and this, that, and the other. Like, but his job was at night time. He used to kangaroo watching, or he'd have to shoot the kangaroos if they came on, if he came kind of looking at the fruit and at the fruit, So he said he loved it for 6 months, and after that, then he couldn't do it. I won't mention names. Go on,
a black site for production of, or for the growing of grapes, not production of wine.
Spent the year there, came back to Ireland. Unfortunately, came back right into the recession of 2008. Yeah. And then I was thinking I'll go to Scotland again, do the Master Distiller, but actually it was stone broke. So it took me about 2 years then of working kind of on and off again. Finally scrope all the money up together. Moved to Edinburgh. Did the Master Brewer, Master Distiller course. Out of university, I got hired by C&C. In Wellpark, they make Tennants, and here they make Bulmers, so mainly in Clonmel, when they put in a craft brewery. Stayed there for about a year and a half, and I heard Teeling were building their distillery in Dublin. And their master distiller Alex had also done the same course as me in Edinburgh.
Wow.
At the same time?
No, it was a few years before me. But it was quite a small course back when I did it. I think when he did it, probably only about 10 people. When I did it, probably only about 20 people. And I think there's 120 people a year doing it now.
Okay.
So called them up. I was like, "Are you going to need any help?" And they hired me on as the lead distiller when Newmarket Distillery was just opening up.
Oh wow!
Okay, good.
So cut my teeth at Teeling for about 2.5 years as the lead distiller. When I heard that Clonakilty were going to be opening a new distillery down in Cork, and I was from Cork, the price of living in Dublin was, I guess you can only live in a box room for so long with weirdos you don't like. So
it's called growing up, I think.
So I contacted Michael and Scully, who was the founder down there, and he was like, "Yeah, come on down." So he took me on as the master brewer, master blender, master distiller down there, which was great because working with Alex, he taught me a lot about distilling, but I thought I was ready to take the next step. Stayed there for about 4.5 years, building that distillery and kind of building the whiskey. Actually, I just left a few weeks before the spirit was actually turning 3, so it was kind of sad to leave the baby. But Powerscourt were looking for a new head distiller, and if you've been up there, you see how beautiful the estate is, and all the equipment is, like the Rolls Royce.
There's no shortage of money.
Brewing and distilling equipment, turnkey 4 sites plant. So that kind of coaxed me to move up to Powerscourt. That's where I've been for nearly 3 years now.
Where's next?
I think
4.5 years seems to be the kind of the.
I've been getting around a bit in the last few years, but I guess when I started, I was lucky when I actually decided to got the money together to go to Edinburgh. It was kind of the very start of the real craft rise and all because Teeling were not the first, but one of the first to have their distillery finished. Yeah. So I was kind of leaving the university at the right time, but I know I'm with Powerscourt now for the long haul, I think.
Good, yeah. I suppose you've moved around a couple of different places, as you've named Teeling was at Clonakilty, Powerscourt. Now, I mean, what's it that makes Powerscourt whiskey or the Fourcullen, I suppose, as unique as it is?
The thing I really love about the Powerscourt Distillery, so it's a turnkey 4-site plant, and it's quite a big plant.
Explain what that means, just people who are listening, because they might get that.
So 4 sites. They are a company. They started probably doing kind of oil rig. They're a Scottish company, still makers, and they also make tanks and brewing equipment. Yeah. So they would have started as servicing the oil rigs out of the North Sea there. So the equipment they make is bulletproof. So it has to survive in the North Sea. So everything is over-spec'd. We have a mash conversion vessel for doing our pot still. It has a motor on it. It looks like it could raise the Titanic. Which for me it gives you a sense of peace of mind. Like when I need to brew, it's gonna actually brew. Saying that, it's a 3-ton plant, so it's kind of a medium to large distillery. Not large as in some of the bigger distilleries, but in the craft scene, it's about medium to large. But it's also a completely manual distillery.
Oh wow!
So we've minimum automation on it. So all the steam on the stills is all controlled by just like a wheel. If you want to use if the distiller on the day is seeing that the still is running too hot, the spirit's running too fast, and it's the skill of the distiller to turn down the steam rather than a computer measuring the ABV and the flow rate of the liquid coming off. So it's a high skill distillery to operate, but because it's such a high skill and the distiller needs to pay such attention, consistent quality out of the stills is what really makes Powerscourt stand out from say some of the others in the category where it's just not a computer monitoring how many litres have gone through the still and that's when you cut it. It's the man standing at the spirit safe every day using his senses to say that the spirit is good, because batches of grain vary from harvest to harvest, load to load, maltster to maltster. Fermentations for whatever reason might not have gone as consistent as it was last week, and that's where you need that human input to make sure your spirit is being consistently good every day, which is lost maybe in some of the larger distilleries in the country.
And I suppose is that a skill that you had to kind of learn or maybe relearn? I don't know.
Yeah, it's just pretty much on the job, nosing the spirit every day. So when the spirit still starts running, higher alcohols, you're getting kind of acetone, your nose, you whip your head back when you take a sniff of that. Probably about 84% alcohol, but the higher alcohols really burn. And then when that kind of burn dissipates, you're down to about 81% alcohol, you start getting a bit of sweetness, that's when you take your head's cut. And then you say you're running it for, in our particular case, about 1,500 litres. That sweetness is starting to turn into more of a cooked kind of vegetable kind of flavour, and that's when you know to cut it again. And it's just experience running stills. How you become a good stillman.
Sounds like a good day. Yeah.
Well,
I suppose
it could be 8 in the morning and you're sniffing this 84% alcohol and you're like, oh no.
I don't see a problem really, to be honest. I've not been asked to drink it just at that stage, just yet. How many people are actually are there in terms of distilling or trained? Because obviously there has to be more than just yourself.
Yeah, well, at the moment we have 3 trained distillers and then 1 kind of our warehouse managers.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Including myself, but we're not running like full tilt or anything at the moment.
Yeah.
Distillery is kind of future-proofed in its size that we don't have to run 24/7 to produce enough spirit for what we predict we'll sell in the future.
Excellent. I suppose. Well, we're here for a tasting this evening, so why not maybe talk us through the core range that we're going to look at for Cullen in general, and maybe then what we're going to have here as part of the tasting this evening? Yeah,
so on the tasting this evening we're going to start with our 15-year-old single grain. Obviously our distillery is only operating since 2018, and we are a pot still distillery, so we produce single malt and we produce pot still. So this is a sourced grain. We have recast it 50% into new fill bourbon barrels, 50% into refilled Madeira barrels. So grain whiskey is great in that it's corn based. The grain itself doesn't have as much spice as say a barley, so it can take on a finish really well. And in this refilled Madeira barrel, because it's refilled, it doesn't have a huge amount of red fruits. It's more kind of a tropical fruits mixed with that European oak to give it a real vanilla tropical fruit flavour. And that whiskey, the marketeers were on to me today. That one, world's best.
Oh, world's best.
Grain.
Okay, world's best.
Not Irish best single grain. World's best.
They're starting off with a good one, son. They're starting off with a good one.
Single grain at the World Whiskey Awards this year in London.
Did they send you a file this morning with what you're supposed to say?
No. They said one thing. Mention the awards.
Yeah, I mean, like you have some gorgeous whiskies. Actually, we're sitting here in the parlour. There's a full shelf of them there. Like, I mean, what's there? There's 10 bottles actually up there belong to you, as well as a couple more that you brought along. Like, we're looking at everything from a 21-year-old right down to a 10-year-old. I think one of our favourites, is that the Italian Gates. The
Italian Garden. That was the Gates was number 2 of the Estate series.
Yeah, and it's one that we have. If you look, there's very little of it left, and when it's gone, it's going to be.
I see. When that's gone, it's gone.
It's gone. Yeah, we often use it here. People don't realise that it's actually it is so limited. Like, but it's quite nice. I suppose you mentioned the cask, right? You mentioned recasking, you mentioned Madeira. What else do you utilise, and I suppose how do you source those casks?
So what don't we have at this stage? So when I joined, I started buying a lot of barrels. So all the sherries from PX, Oloroso, Parlour Cortado, Amontillado, then Ruby Port, White Port, Red Lagrima Port, Tawny Port. Wines, Bordeaux, orange wine, which we're actually going to try tonight, which is a bit of an unusual one.
Yeah.
Madeira Marsala, Stout, Mezcal, and we have a lot of brandies, apple brandy, pineapple brandy, strawberry brandy, watermelon brandy.
Oh. Watermelon brandy.
It's a very subtle, pink watermelon. you wouldn't know it unless you told it, but it does add kind of a like freshness to the whiskey.
It's a cucumber. You're a taster. You don't taste it, yeah.
Yeah.
You have a right myriad of them. So I presume you must have this whole cask barrel program going on with a whole idea into the future. Like, I mean, what in the next 5 years? What are we going to expect? Like,
yeah, whiskey it's a long game. You need to be thinking years in advance. Definitely, we'll probably do a kind of a finished version of our single malt. The first is most likely going to be a Madeira, because I think that's has come along quite well. And then, of course. So our pot still now is about 6. I would say I'll put that into some finishing and probably release it maybe when it's 7. So maybe not this year, next year, late next year.
Yeah. But we release it as an age statement to 7-year-old, or would you kind of just as a pot still?
I think that would be an age.
Would you think age? Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, very good. We have to keep an eye out for that one. So
yeah, excellent. So I mean, very manual stiller, which I love the idea of hands on it, right? And I think that's when it comes down to it, I mean. Anything that you have to control yourself, and the human element is in control, I think is often more personal and more kind of more unique, right? But I suppose, how do you keep the innovation going then within for Cullen as well, like within Powerscourt?
Within, you can do innovation in distillery, and then you can do innovation on the warehouse side.
Yeah.
So usually I say the distillery is more where the science is, and then when you're in the warehouse you're tasting, and it's the craft of the blender to put all these different flavours together to make a product. But say on the distillery side, from my craft brewing time and working with Teeling, we've done some kind of unique pot still recipes using brewer's malts and brewer's yeasts. So we've done a chocolate malt pot still with oats, crystal malt pot still with oats. We did a high amber malt, only using Hefeweizen yeast, so you get a lot of toffee from that amber malt, and then the Hefeweizen yeast is
banana and
that banana flavour, and then I put some of that into rum barrels. So I'm kind of thinking that'll be maybe like a pina colada kind of
be very sweet,
weird flavour in a few years. Then crystal malt, and the big thing, because as I started as a microbiologist, we have a lot of beehives out the back, and so I got TU Dublin to come down and work with their microbiology department, and we took some samples from the beehives, and we took some samples from the flowers in the Italian gardens, because if you're looking for yeast in nature, the best place to look is anywhere insects will traverse. They'll transfer them around. So at the moment we have isolated 6 different yeasts that can ferment and assimilate carbs from malt. So actually I'd say maybe this time next month, in conjunction with a yeast company, we're going to start doing flavour trials on those yeasts, and then incorporate them into our spirits going forward.
Jesus Christ, I mean, you know what, right? I have to say that sounds really, really interesting. I'm kind of drawn back to some of the brewery boys and girls will say maybe 4 or 5, 6, 7 years ago we're talking about harvesting yeast from around the wild yeast and using it, but that kind of has died off a little bit, you know. I mean, but to hear that it's going into the whiskey side of the world, I suppose it makes total sense. It would.
Well, yeast is, you know, a lot of people have started using the heritage grains, and then obviously the barrel finishes are massive. Very few people have worked with the yeast, unless you have microbiologists, someone with a microbiology background that maybe isn't as familiar with how you harvest and propagate yeast. It's a bit more difficult to do. But we're lucky in Wicklow there is an actual yeast company that can help me propagate this for us, and it's only about 10 minutes down the road.
Yeah, we're very good friends up in White Street Brewing, and it's interesting. Sometimes we're having conversations with them and they talk about their yeast dealer, you know, and it kind of gets a bit weird. People looking at us going, is that code for something else? No, it's not. It's actually yeast. You know, but they use a company in the US which is kind of crazy. We think you should go that far to get it. And all this stuff going on with Trump, maybe they mightn't be able to use them as much.
So distillery fermentations compared to a brewery's fermentations are very harsh environments for yeast. So a lot of brewers' yeast would not be able to survive in a distiller's mash.
Okay.
A combination of the high temperatures and the high gravity because we're trying to. Distilleries fermentations and largely are focused on making as much alcohol as you possibly can. So combinations of high temperatures of distillery fermentations are usually 35 degrees, or say a lager fermentations down in the teens. Lager yeast would die immediately inside a distillery's fermentation. So when using yeast in distilleries is only a very narrow range of strains will actually work.
Okay.
So
that's interesting.
I mean, how do you actually approach creating some of those limited editions, those special releases? I mean, is it something that you buy a lot of things in and then just see how it works, or do you have a plan in your head, like your cask program? You buy a lot of things in, but do you match?
I buy a lot of things in, but then what spirit I put into those barrels, I have to think about.
That's the plan. Okay, you're thinking about that. Yeah.
I'm not going to take a 24-year-old whiskey and put it into a watermelon brandy barrel that I've never used before, because who knows what might happen. But if I know I have this, another topic, but age. Age isn't everything on whiskey, and you can have a 22-year-old whiskey that tastes like an old leather shoe and it's musty, and when I come across something like that, I'll be like, that's what I want to put into the sauternes, or it's what I want to put into the white wine barrel, because it gives it a bit more sparkle. It brings the sparkle and freshness back. But then if I have a young 6-year-old malt and I'm like, still a little pin, hasn't extracted a lot of the sugars from the wood yet, put that into a heavy PX or something that thickens it up real nice. So,
and is that discovered by trial and error on your part, or is that something that was taught during the course?
No, the course itself is not really focused on maturation as much as it is on spirit production. That's real, just kind of, I don't know, when I smell a whiskey and I'm like, that's a little thin, I should put it into something a little thick.
It's a bit of experience more so than anything. So you're learning on the job kind of experience more.
What's the biggest mistake you've made then? Go on.
I guess the biggest mistake, and a lot of people get out. I know I put some grain into some sulphur barrels before, but
did you learn from it though?
I learned. I even learned how to fix it.
It's okay once you learn,
and you can fix it afterwards.
Once you can fix it, that's always the best way to do it,
When you're a smaller craft distillery and this wasn't that Powerscourt. When you're buying in liquid, you need a return on that investment.
Yeah, 100%. And would you know is on the barrels yourself now, or is it kind of a combination between the 3 or 4 in the warehouse before you buy them?
Any kind of wine barrel that comes in on those.
Everything.
We're not bringing in hundreds of them. We bring in thousands of bourbon barrels, but I'm pretty happy with my supplier I use, and the same supplier I've used for the last 10 years.
So you kind of know they're not going to.
I have a pretty good relationship now with a broker for, say, like down in south of France and Spanish barrels, French barrels too, but I do still know everything, because things do get through the cracks.
Well, they do, and I suppose over time they can change. Like by the time you kind of are coming across the water, like it can kind of change a small bit. So it's good to know before you put spirit into them.
Any kind of fortified wine barrel or wine barrel, I just don't know them. We take the heads off and we look for any kind of evidence now of like previous sulphur or anything. And if there is, we can scrape that out. And
there's a bit of science to it, so
I put in a line direct into our steam line where we can steam everything.
Again, evidence of wonderful innovation going on as well,
and learning, I suppose, learning from your mistakes.
The sulphur is quite a volatile substance anyway, so if you do heat it up, you can
kind of get rid of it.
Best not to have it in the first place.
No.
What's been the highlight of your time in Powerscourt so far?
Highlight, I guess. don't bang on about awards again, but winning the...
Go on, you might as well.
Winning the world's best grain. That's the first time I've ever won a world's best grain, which was brilliant. And also when I won Master Distiller of the Year, I guess, at World Whisky Awards, that was a point of pride for me too.
Master Distiller of the Year.
Congratulations.
Well done. This now is as bad as where we're kind of coming to the end of it and someone goes, yeah, I played soccer for Ireland. You know, I won Master Distiller of the Year. I'm going to ask for a bio to be submitted in advance. And what was involved in that? That was a panel of people that judged your whiskey or judged you, or
well, for the whiskey it's the 15. You know, it goes through the regional awards and then it goes to... I was a judge before at World Whisky Awards. You go to London and you can get various categories.
Yeah.
And they taste your whiskey. That's what the 15 won. How you win the world, the Master Distiller of the Year for Ireland is, I'd say, it's judged by the people of the Whisky magazine.
Okay, okay. Good comment. I suppose if someone was to start out in the very beginning of their career, because it sounds like you had a plan from day one, from finishing college with microbiology, and then you mentioned a couple of times you were going to Scotland. What advice would you give them if they were starting their career day one?
So when I started my career, I was focused on getting into the industry. You know what? The biggest thing I would say is join as many whiskey clubs as you can and live the whiskey lifestyle. Taste whiskey. You know, when you're saying blending, how you know what goes into a lot of it is just because I tasted a lot of whiskey over the years. I would highly recommend the course in Edinburgh, because it's not just when you're there, you're fully immersed in the whiskey life. So I had an apartment with one other lad who is now the Master Distiller for Angel's Envy in Kentucky.
Oh, brilliant.
And what did we do all day? We went to college, we came back and we set up our own stills in the apartment.
Of course,
we distilled all day. So just immerse yourself in it.
Have a little bit of fun.
You gotta have fun. Like, there's no point doing something you don't like.
Well, no, you have to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, there's no point doing it, really, you know.
And I suppose if you could share a dram then with anyone, living, dead, real or fictional, who would that be and why?
Well, I guess the person I always wanted to meet was Dimebag Darrell, who is the Dimebag Darrell. He was the guitarist for Pantera, a heavy metal band.
Go on, I've heard of Pantera. No, I have no clue.
Legendary whiskey drinker back in his day, and he just looked like he really had probably too much of a good time, maybe. Him or probably Billy Connolly, but I think I'd probably spit out my whiskey so much because I'd be laughing.
I suppose just we're kind of coming to the end, and conscious that we were tasting as well going on, right? But I mean, you mentioned that you sourced some of your spirit in, right? I mean, do you think just in the industry as a whole there is enough transparency around sourcing and source spirit, or is there still that little bit of hidden behaviour going on with some of the distilleries?
Yeah, there is and there isn't. So we have sourced liquid, but once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah.
And then we're moving on to our own. But we're lucky enough to have a lovely distillery to produce our own.
But to be very fair, you've been very open. That's never been a secret. You've been very open about it, you know. But I mean, I suppose, do you think there's others out there who aren't as open and just...
Oh, look, there's absolutely open. Now, even if you go to a liquor store in the US, you see Timmy O'Toole's drop in the morning. Irish whiskey. And it looked like exactly like they have a distillery. Like, I hate that. The labelling law should be tighter on that. It should say exactly where it's produced. But then again, the distilleries that sell spirits probably don't want that, because if they sell spirit and someone else ruins it, it'll tarnish their reputation. So there's for and against, I guess. But overall, I would prefer complete transparency on, say, we are a bonder, we are a distiller. We didn't make this whiskey, this crowd did, and we did X, Y, and Z with it. So in that way, the distillery is protected, kind of that they have changed the whiskey a bit in case it was ruined. But
I suppose I suppose that leads into the kind of next question. There's a lot of new distilleries kind of popping up in the last kind of number of years around Ireland. Do you think it's starting to get oversaturated, or do you think there's still enough room for everyone at the moment? Or
No, look, when you compare, it might seem like there's a lot of distilleries now, but when you compare the size of the Irish whiskey industry compared to Scotch or bourbon, we're still very small in terms of
true, I suppose, true.
So even, you chisel off a few percent off Scotch and that's millions of bottles of whiskey, there should be room for everything.
There should be room for
But then again, go back to your previous comment, and there was a Timmy O'Toole's whiskey in the US.
There's some people who see that Irish whiskey was booming and they'd watch the industry burn to make a quick buck. But these people don't care. They're not even part of the whiskey industry.
No, they're in it for a few quid.
And I suppose then, the GI index is there to probably help protect whiskey, but maybe should it be tighter?
The GI is a technical file about how you produce the whiskey. If there was going to be protections on who can buy it and sell it, that would probably lie elsewhere.
How you can label it as well.
That wouldn't lie within the technical file really. The technical file is just where you can use barley, malt, whatever. Protecting it outside that and who can buy it probably lies somewhere else. Where that would be, I'm not entirely sure. Department of Agriculture labelling laws or something like that.
Okay, look, huge thanks. It's been absolutely completely interesting. I mean, you've had a wonderful career for such a young man.
Long way to go.
And you travel around and work with some wonderful companies as well. But thank you very much for joining us here in Limerick this evening.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Have a good night.
I would like to thank Paul Corbett for discussing his progression in the whisky world and living the whisky life. Here's to every cask, the craft and the conversation. May every pour be a story and every story a memory. Please remember to join us for our next episode when we invite in the absolutely fantastic Ger Garland, formerly of O'Shaughnessy's Distillery and Keeper's Heart. Until then, cheers to the whisky that brings us together, one sip at a time.